Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Global Summit. I Am Possible, a global event to inspire you the courage to be yourself. And today we have Scott Silverstone. He's the founder of Shamanic Spirit Medicine and a leader in the international shamanic teaching community. One of the main focal points of Scott's teaching is to normalize shamanic consciousness as an ancient and effective method of achieving both personally and collectively. And his topic today is bringing forth your medicine. So welcome, Scott. I would love you first to introduce your background in shamanism. Why did you start? And we are connecting with Hawaii from Thailand today. So is the magic of online world and the web of life that is very important in your work. So
Yes.
welcome, and I would love to hear from you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mar. Thank you for inviting me and having me and giving me the opportunity to share with you and with everybody. I feel this work is so important. It's so important with all the changes happening in the world now. This is a wake-up call for our human family, that it's time for us to step back into our roles of being caretakers of the web of life.
Mm-hmm.
And we've dropped off of that role. We've kind of become so self-absorbed with other mental goals that we've forgotten that the web of life is our source, the source of everything for us, of all our nourishment and all our sustainability. And we've forgotten how to relate to the web of life as a caretaker and how to relate to each other as caretakers as well. My personal background and journey in shamanism started in the mid-1990s. I was living in northern Arizona, and I had left New York City, where I had been working in the corporate world, doing a job that I did not like very much. It was interesting mentally, and I certainly learned and was grateful for the opportunity that I had there. But it was hurting my spirit. I wasn't expressing who I was. I wasn't who I was day by day. I was having to conform. I was having to put on a costume, put on a suit and a tie, act a certain way in meetings, and achieve the company objectives rather than just being who I am and being true to myself. As a result of all that, I got quite sick. I got ill. I was depleted. I didn't have any real grounding. I just knew I needed to leave, and I went out to nature, and pretty much every day I would walk around in nature. And I began to have these experiences when I was in nature where I was called to a certain place to just sit and to listen. And I began to receive information from nature. So depending on where I was, I might be drawn to a rock or a lake or a viewpoint over a mountain. And I was getting these downloads from nature just consistently. And they were, we call them insights, but to me, they were very revelatory. They seemed like epiphanies to me at the time. They helped me begin to heal some of the reasons why I hadn't taken the steps to fulfill myself earlier in my life, but had followed a path that was sort of the easiest path to go rather than the path that was true to my heart and true to my spirit. So then I met and began working with somebody in northern Arizona who was a shaman herself and had done a lot of training. And we worked one-on-one, and she also did some wonderful energy healing work. And we worked one-on-one for about 3 years. Once a week we would meet. And she really helped me a lot. She helped open up my energy body. She helped teach me how to ground myself. She helped me open up my connection to source. And of course, I also practiced. I had a lot of time to be in nature and to practice. So this is what opened the doorway to me to the shamanic world. And then I began to learn shamanic journey work. And I was with multiple trainings with both American institutions and over the world with various teachers, some of whom were indigenous, some were not. And it doesn't matter if you come from an indigenous culture or a cross-cultural shamanism background. It's all about connecting with our spirit mind. So as I continue to evolve in these trainings and learn, what I found was that I really loved the shamanic work. It was great for my own self-healing. It was great for helping others, but there was a big missing. And the big missing in that training that I received was that we weren't taught how to turn off our intuitive awareness. It was either on all the time or off all the time. Nobody taught me that it's about turning it on and off. It's an aperture, it breathes. It's a channel. It's supposed to open and close. So if you're in a big box store like Walmart, you don't necessarily want to turn that channel wide open and pull in all the energy that's hanging out in the rafters of Walmart and see what's there. That's not a great use of that skill. It might cause a lot of issues. However, if you're out in nature in a beautiful place that's clean, yeah, you want to turn that open wide. So just like if you're a photographer with a camera, if it's a really high light, high static situation, you want to narrow down that aperture to just get what you want. So I go into Walmart, and especially this is really important for people who practice these any types of healing arts, but especially the intuitive ones and shamanic ones, where we open ourselves as a big gateway to spirit, and we have this big flood of energy coming in. It's extremely important that we learn this, because we have to have these filters up. We have to have this discernment. So when I go into Walmart, I narrow it way down. I'm just here for the cat litter. Okay. And I'm going home. That's it. I'm not here to know about, it's not a big trick to read somebody, right? It's intrusive if they don't ask. Okay. So it's not a big trick. Like if once you've opened up these realms of consciousness, it's not a big trick to look at the person who's helping you in the checkout line and see lots of things about their personal life and their past and where the attachments are and where their wounding is. It's also very rude to do that to somebody without their consent. Certainly never work on anybody without their consent, but even reading somebody without their consent, when there's no reason for it, they're not a threat to you and they haven't asked, that's rude. So we want to turn that right down, because it's not really fun if you're standing in the line and all of a sudden some spirit, wandering middle world spirit, is tapping on the shoulder and saying, hey, I need help, or there are 100 of them. Right? That's not a fun thing. So we narrow it right down. I'm just here for the cat litter, man. That's it. Okay. Now, when we're out in nature or we're doing a ceremony or we're working on someone, I open that wide. Okay. So this was the part of training that I didn't ever really receive, but I had to learn it the hard way. I learned it the hard way in day-to-day life of, getting all that information about people that was A, none of my business, and B, not helpful at all to me. And also when I was working with my clients in healing sessions, and sometimes they would, their stuff, the things that were afflicting them, I would start to feel them empathically within myself. And so as an empath, and I think a lot of healers are naturally empathic, if you begin to experience the emotions or the physical afflictions of your clients, that's not healthy. So we have to learn how to have those boundaries, not only how to cleanse ourselves afterwards, but how to not pick it up to begin with. And so as a result of that, and working with a couple of healers who were teachers to me, I refined this ability so I could open and close the aperture, open and close the aperture. And this is what's talked about a lot in the classic Taoist and Tai Chi texts, opening and closing, opening and closing. And so I developed this, and a very clear program that I developed with guidance from spirit through my shamanic journey work. I was actually downloaded a lot of this teaching of how to pass that on to other people, so that people who want to make a positive contribution in the world and help others are able to do so sustainably. And one of the saddest things for me is when you see a healer, someone who does beautiful healing work, and maybe they've been doing it for 15 or 20 years, and they're burnt out on it because they have so much stuff stuck to them. And I've seen this hundreds and hundreds of times. There was one person who was an amazing massage therapist, physical therapist actually, and he would tell me, I went to him because I had a shoulder injury. This was many, many years ago, probably 20 some odd years ago. And he said, oh, I knew it was a shoulder I was working on today. My shoulder started hurting this morning before you came. And I was like, oh, wow. At that time, I was like, wow, that's pretty neat. He's that tapped in. But now with the experience and perspective of experience and age, I'm like, man, that must be a really hard life. Every client, you feel what they're having. Like maybe you can make an agreement not to carry that stuff and still be able to be of service. I've had clients who come, a lot of Reiki practitioners come, and they do beautiful work and they want to do healing work and help people. But after a year or two or three, they're carrying so much stuff from other people that it's really hard for them. So I'm very passionate about helping people do that so that they can step fully into their role of helping people. So yeah, that's how I came on this path. And I was actually asked to teach. I was just doing the healing sessions myself, and somebody contacted me out of the blue and said, hey, I'm coming to Kauai for 5 weeks. Would you be willing to teach me what you do? And I journeyed on it and I said, sure, you seem like a good person. And then out of that, I developed this method of teaching. I said, okay, now I've got to figure out how to teach this person. She who was a healer herself, she did kinesiology and she wanted to add shamanism into her practice. And so as I journeyed, and then she came and she met with my wife and I 3-4 days a week for 5 weeks, maybe almost 6 weeks. And each day after she would go home, I would journey on it. What do I need to teach her next? So our program is really developed based on how to walk somebody through this learning process. And after she left, I was like, well, that was kind of neat. And at the time, I never checked my Facebook page or the messages from that. And I saw a message from someone that had been sitting there 2 weeks, who was coming from England, and said, oh, hey, I really want to learn what you do. Would you be willing to teach me? And so I emailed her back right away. I'm so sorry. I just saw the message, believe it or not. And so then a few months later, she was there. And then right as she was getting ready to leave, someone who I'd done a session on said, would you please teach me? And that lasted another month. And so this continued for a full year. And then finally, I'm kind of slow on the uptake. I got it. Spirit was telling me I need to do this and focus on teaching. And I received a vision also of how when I help somebody as an individual, it's like one drop sending waves out. But if I help by teaching others, it's multiple drops sending waves out. And that's what we need to do, to send multiple waves out through the web of life to help bring us back into balance, bring humanity's relationship with the web back into balance.
I would love you to talk more now about what do you mean about bringing our medicine forward. So this is kind of like the idea of the summit, that is, I am possible. Like the work that each one of us have to do is specific of who we are. And sometimes we try to look up to other people on how to do it, but then sometimes it's just not done before, right? We have to do it. So this is exactly what you're saying about you need to teach your own experience with that, because only you can do that, right? So 100%. I would love you to share more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Mar. So first of all, I just wanted to define from the shamanic perspective what medicine means is our healing energy, our healing ability, the healing. So when I say it's bear medicine, it is the healing that is carried by a bear, or the spirit of the bear. Okay, if I'm talking about, we're not talking about a medicine that you go to the doctor to get. Okay, so when I say bring forth our medicine, or bring forth your medicine, it's bring forth your unique healing. Just as you're saying, I am possible, it is bringing forth your unique healing into the world. So what are my gifts? What healing can I bring that's unique to me? Because you see, the medicine flows through each of us in a unique way. It's our connection to spirit, is how spirit flows through me, how spirit flows through you. Now understand, it's one spirit. It's the spirit that flows through all things. It's a spirit that moves through all things. Okay, it's the creative force, the life force energy. It is the creative force from source energy that flows through us. However, what makes us all unique and individual is the way that it flows through us. So I couldn't do what you do effectively. First of all, I'm not fluent in Spanish. Okay. Second of all, you have other gifts and talents that I don't. Okay. On the other hand, you might not be able to do what I do effectively because I have my unique path, my walk that I've walked, my experiences, and my own unique gifts, talents, and skills that I've developed over time. Now, that doesn't mean we can't align and both bring our medicines forward together in a collaborative way or individually, not even knowing each other. It just means that that healing energy, that positive energy is going to flow through each individual in its own unique way. So when I say bring forth your medicine or learn to bring forth your medicine, it means trust in yourself, trust in your connection to Creator, and learn how to ground that connection into Mother Earth so that that medicine can flow through you and make a positive contribution to the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Because also when people have their awakening or they start going forward a more spiritual practice, they kind of like feel that they have to break totally with their past. But there is a reason why, at least that is my perspective, there is a reason why they chose that path. So it's very interesting to integrate everything that we have done in order to be totally like more service.
Yes,
So
that's a really good point. I'd like to speak to that actually, because
mhm,
when somebody has an awakening, as you were saying, and they feel the need to break with their past, what they're really feeling to do is to break with their way of being in the world previously and the way they respond to the world. And that goes to the agreements that we make about ourselves, the world, and our place within it. So it doesn't mean necessarily that the world itself has changed. It just means that we want to respond differently. And whether that means getting out of a bad relationship or an unhealthy relationship or changing careers or moving, we have to take that action. And that action is grounding. So we get that guidance from spirit. It's not enough just to awaken. We have to apply that awakening. So just if my crown is open and I'm getting a lot of messages, that's only part one. And as I
mhm,
said, there's no real trick in opening the crown. What's unfortunate is a lot of people are teaching just to open the crown, but not very many people are teaching how to ground that. Okay. And as we know from Tai Chi and common sense and Taoism, there can be no up without a down. So you don't build a building, you don't build a 50-story skyscraper by digging 5 feet into the earth. So the further up you want to go, the further down you need to go. We always have to find our grounding first. And that starts with very simple day-to-day applied things. If I get an intuitive guidance or I get a guidance from spirit through journey work, I need to apply that in my day. So if I have an awakening that, oh, I need to change careers and put in my resignation and start this, and then I procrastinate it and I don't do it, it kind of cancels it out, right? We have to
mhm.
actually place things into action. And that's extremely important. So we don't necessarily have to break with our past in order to put them into action. Sometimes breaking with our past isn't even that helpful because we just will create those same patterns again, right? So what happens is we get this awakening and we say, this has been a bad experience. Now, of course, if it's an unhealthy relationship, we want to break that relationship. But let's say we have this work experience and I can't, this isn't right for me. And I'm just going to stop. But then somebody recreates the same thing again and again and again. So we have to actually get underneath that and have more than just the awareness and go, well, why am I recreating this over and over again? Maybe it would be better to stay in that situation for a short period of time, potentially, and reform that relationship, to reform the way we respond to that. And then say, okay, well, now that I've related to this, it still doesn't fit me, but I've made the changes that I've needed to make rather than taking some cathartic change just on like an instant of an insight. Okay, so we have to actually apply that in day-to-day life and say, okay, this is what my guidance is. What's not working for me in this situation is the way that I'm being treated in this relationship, let's say in a work relationship. I'm going to come in and I'm going to make some changes. I'm not going to allow people to treat me in this manner. And then if they continue to push the boundaries, then you can, okay, that's it, we're done. Okay. But it gives us an opportunity to practice that in the moment.
And the embodiment, right? Like it's so important to embody all those messages. If not, it's not real here, right? In the physical world where we are as well. So
Absolutely, we have to embody it. That's absolutely
yes,
correct.
and it's, I don't know, for me it's very important, like the life purpose, and it's very connected with our gifts, right? Like there is something specifically for each one of us that we are just like really moving towards there, and if we are out of alignment we feel it and then we get sick. So it's, yeah, like how we embody that, and sometimes it's not so much about the doing but being in that presence of being who we are. So in that I would love you to talk more about the web of life, because I feel especially in these times of crisis that people feel very disempowered, in the sense that there is a reality out there that is changing their lives, but what is it that each one of us can do to be part of the change, instead of feeling that we are just lost?
Right.
So
Yes.
what will be your
And
thoughts on that?
yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking that question. So, um, first of all, we have the embodiment part is so important. We have to embody our guidance.
Mhm.
If we don't embody it, we don't ground it. It's just a thought. It's just a mind game, really, that we play with ourselves. With regards to the web of life, we have to understand that we are part of the web of life. We are a strand on the web of life, and everything we do impacts the web of life. Okay, so how I am with you when we discourse, the respect that I give you as another human being, as another part of the web that is sacred, equally sacred, right? That shows my respect to both you as an individual and the web of life as a whole. Now, of course, not everybody acts that way in the world. We know that if we are breathing and have our eyes open. However, that doesn't mean that we have to regress to that level of being. So when we treat life as sacred and the web of life as sacred, and we see that we are a part of that web, then we can see things from a different perspective. We can say, oh, look, this time of crisis is the web of life trying to rebalance itself. The web of life is really one organism. Okay, it's an organism that works together, just like our bodies are a miniature web, right? When you go to sleep, you don't think about digestion after your meal. You're not thinking when you eat your proteins that, oh, my liver's now, I mean, my stomach now has to put in the hydrochloric acid and it has to create the pepsin to break down the proteins. And then it has to get absorbed through the, we'd go crazy if we were thinking about all this stuff that our body just does for us. It's the same with the web of life. The earth, Gaia, the web of life as a whole is not thinking about each individual thing. It's just trying to attain balance. So just like if we have a pathogen that enters our body, we might run a fever, we might have a swelling, we might have a cough. That's our body rebalancing in order to get rid of something that doesn't belong, okay? I had a friend come by and she had hurt her knee and it was very swollen. And it's like, well, yeah, your body is sending all this extra fluid there, both to stabilize it and also to bring extra healing energy and blood cells to that area to help it heal faster. So now we take that perspective and we look at the web of life here and what's happening with COVID and how travel is basically non-existent these days. And you look at, well, what's happening with air quality. There's much less air pollution. Of course, there's pollution now happening in California and Oregon and Washington from these massive fires. But that's a different aspect of the web of life being out of balance through excessive temperatures. And part of this is the web of life just rebalancing itself. It's saying, hey, you humans, there are a lot of you. You've killed a lot of other species. You're killing them every day. You're not respecting the web. You're not respecting the earth. You're not tending it for the future generations. Here's this little bug that can help slow you guys down and make you think a little bit. Maybe you want to think about your actions, okay? You've had 14,000 summits on global warming and why we need to change, but you haven't really done anything. How about if we just shut down air travel for a year? Maybe that will help out, okay? So the web of life is trying to find its way to balance. So when we begin to think of it in this way, we go, okay, I'm not trying to change policy. Leave that to decision makers, or run for elected office if that's something that you really want to do. For me, that's not how I want to enact change in the world. But I can spread awareness. I can shine the light of consciousness onto certain ways of being that are happening in the world. And it's very important, this idea of spreading, shining the light of consciousness onto things, because as we know, there's lightness and darkness. Light cannot exist without the dark. They can't exist without the other. Okay, and a lot of the darkness is about manipulation, about things that harm others, and but it's a natural part of life. It's just like a black hole. You don't rage against a black hole and go, I can't believe that black hole's out there sucking in other planets. We don't do that. Okay, it's the same thing. There's darkness that's part of the process of life. Now, it doesn't mean we have to submit to it, but when we shine our light of consciousness on that, we reveal it. Okay, the darkness is also a part within us where we're unaware. It's a part of us that receives healing. It's a part of us that's hidden from our own view. So as we shine these lights of consciousness and shine our awareness on these places, it hides. Okay, well, it can no longer hide. It has to come out from the shadows. And that gives us an opportunity. So if you see what's happening in America right now with social justice issues, and we're seeing how some things like racism, institutionalized racism and hate have been hidden right through this movement of what was previously called political correctness, where everyone was pretending that, oh, that doesn't happen anymore. Look how equal we all are. But that's not actually true. Look what's happening now. All that hidden resentment that was there all along is coming out from under its little rock and rearing its head. And this is an opportunity for us to address it because it's coming out into the light of day. So rather than saying, oh my God, I can't believe people still think that way, which is very easy to do because it's like, really? You think like that? Okay, I get that. At the same time, wow, that's an opportunity to see where people are really at and to bring that change in consciousness there. So the best thing that we can do individually right now when we're in these times of crisis is to think about, how do we relate to the web of life, and how can I become a caretaker for the web of life? How can I do that? It can be as simple as planting a garden in your backyard. It can be as simple as changing your consciousness. It requires a consciousness shift on a large scale. It requires a critical mass of humanity to shift consciousness from how much can I take right now to how can I caretake the web of life for future generations.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's so important, right? Like each person can do something, because I think now what we are feeling collectively is a sense of like, what? And it's so interesting. It's like each person is living their part of something that they knew it wasn't working in their life, and now it's kind of like coming into the light of, this hasn't been working for a long time. What are you going to do about that? So it's very interesting in what you are saying, right? Like there is this collective social injustice that is coming, but it's also in each person is coming towards our consciousness. This hasn't been working, so there is a need for a change. So I love that. I would love you to explain more about how doing shamanic journeying and dreaming into our gifts can help us in our daily life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it ties into what you were just saying too about what can each of us do? And sometimes we're feeling a little lost. Well,
Yeah.
the first thing that we have to know is, before we take on these kind of grander tasks of, helping humanity in the web of life, we actually have to start with ourselves, and we have to keep ourselves clear day by day. Okay, because there is a lot of disinformation that is coming out there. We are under, anybody who looks on social media, anybody who really is exposed to media, we're under a lot of psychological attack. And it's intentional, and it's psychological warfare, and it's being carried out professionally by sophisticated and well-trained intelligence or espionage people. Okay, there's a specific agenda, and I know this isn't really a shamanic thing, but it's important to bring this into the light of consciousness. There is a well thought out, sophisticated agenda that is being carried out by state-sponsored actors to destabilize Western society, to exploit these divisions that already exist within the society. Okay, and this is not to bring one party forward. They're not trying to get a particular outcome. They're just trying to break the society and the way of life, to disable the existing way of life. Okay, so when we understand that and we look at social media and we see these rather outlandish allegations that are gaining traction, and conspiracy theories that are being gaining traction, and then you see certain political leaders repeating them and adding fuel to that fire, okay, the first thing that we need to do is we need to clear that junk out of our mind. We need to go, you know what? This is not truth. However, here's the hard part. If that pokes into something in which we have a wound or a vulnerability, we're not going to be able to remain neutral very easily. We're going to get involved. We're going to react rather than respond. So if I've been the victim of, say, racial injustice and discriminated against, and then somebody says something that pokes right into that wound, it's going to be very hard for me to take a breath and just be like, yeah, that's okay, and see it objectively. And that's okay. That's normal. That's natural to have those reactions. Okay. It's what's not normal is somebody intentionally trying to prod those wounds because they want to feed off the pain or exploit the pain. That's what's not healthy. That's what's not normal. So we have to understand that this is what's being deployed against the society, and it's being amplified through the use of social media and technology and all sorts of things like that. Okay, so it's amplified. It's not that people didn't used to do that. I mean, remember when you were in 5th grade and people poked fun at you all the time? I mean, and you had to say, I know you are, but what am I? Or words are just words. They didn't hurt me. What you say bounces off me and sticks to you. All those kind of like little elementary school slogans. Well, that's part of what happens in human nature. What the problem is that this has now been amplified, and technology has been used to deploy that and amplify that to an exponential degree. And it's being used on some very deep, vulnerable wounds within the society. So the first thing we have to do is to be able to clear ourselves to see the truth. And this is where the shamanic work comes into play. When I work with people in our courses, the first thing we do is we learn how to enter the shamanic state of consciousness and return safely and effectively. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're not just opening this, but we're also coming back and closing that. Okay. As I said, it's not a big trick to be able to gain spiritual insight and access. What's a big trick is being able to apply that in our life and then go pick up your kids from school and do your banking 10 minutes after you have your spiritual experience. Okay, this is what allows us to walk in both worlds. So first we learn that methodology, and the methodology that I use is with a drum, okay, because I find that the drum is really good for helping us stay engaged and focused. It blocks out the distractions of our wandering mind, and it blocks out any external distractions as well, like, you know, the neighbor playing music or whatever. And it also helps energize it. It gives us some energy. Now, if you're in a place where you can't drum, let's say you have neighbors and it disturbs them, you can just listen to headphones of a drumming track. And we have a free shamanic drumming CD that is going to be a free gift to everybody who's watching. And I think you have the link for that you'll share later.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So this is why I prefer using the drum, because it lets us go and come back. Now, a lot of people in shamanism today in the West are using psychotropic substances like ayahuasca, etc. I don't advocate that use. I respect anybody's choice to do what they want, but that's not my path, and I don't advocate that path for numerous reasons. One, it's really hard to do that every day, so it doesn't become a sustainable practice. Two, it's not something you can turn on and off at will. Right? It's very hard to do that and then go pick your kids up from school 20 minutes later. That's also not very practical. please don't do that. Okay. Number three, it acts like it's so intense. It's like turning it up to full volume. It's turning the amp to 11. It's turning the hose all the way on. And so the way we look at the spirit body and the energetic body is that whenever we have wounds or issues, they're like blockages in the channel that prevent the free flow of energy coming in from spirit and grounding into the earth. And so if I wash that out on high pressure and I have lots of little pebbles there, it's going to look just like a river after a flash flood. Lots of stuff's going to be moved, but it's all going to be in a different place and none of it's going to be fully resolved. And that becomes cathartic. And I have helped a lot of people who have come to me because they had these types of experiences where they went to a retreat center for 4 days, say in Costa Rica, and then they came back and quit their job of 20 years and now they don't know what to do and everything's in turmoil. And it's like, well, wait a minute, hold on, we've got to fully resolve this stuff. Now, I also have friends who have done those types of experiences and received a lot of healing. But to me, that risk-reward ratio isn't there, because the consequence of something going wrong in that situation is really high. When we amp the volume up, we have a much higher consequence of having a negative reaction. And the likelihood is also, it's not huge, but it's enough to make me wary. You would have to have to me, you would have to have gone through every other last resort. So, and finally, on the last reason I don't use the psychedelic is because it begins to act as a gatekeeper, where we cannot access the spirit mind without the use of these substances. And so for me, I believe that it's everybody's birthright to be able to connect directly to spirit and to ground that into Mother Earth. Now, if I need to work with a specific plant spirit to get there, that's a gatekeeper. And I don't want any gatekeepers. Now, it's not a human gatekeeper, but let's say there's somebody who is the medicine carrier and I need to talk to them and they begin to tell me, oh, well, do it this way or do it that way. All of a sudden I have an intermediary between me and spirit, or a plant intermediary that I can't go there. Even if I have it growing in my backyard, I'm still dependent on that to go and come back. So these are the reasons why I like to use the drum. So that's the first part of what we do in our training program. And secondly, then we start to work on what we call the agreements that we've made, which are basically, these are the agreements that we make about ourselves, the world, and our place within the world. Okay, these are unconscious agreements that we've made in childhood, mostly. Sometimes we make agreements in adulthood, also unconsciously as a result of trauma. Say war trauma or abuse, things like that might shift our agreements. But most of the agreements we have about ourselves, the world, and our place within it are formed within the first 6 or 7 years of life. So it depends on your family of origin. It also depends on your society. And there's some global agreements. And it depends on some of your teachers at school and your experiences that you have. Now, this all becomes unconscious. It becomes autonomic. Just like a dog that has been mistreated by the owner, and if the owner was wearing boots of a certain way, the dog would cower. I actually had a neighbor who had adopted a dog from the Humane Society, and this dog had been really abused by its previous owner. And if I was walking past his place and I was wearing my boots as opposed to my sandals or barefoot or shoes, the dog would cower and start to whimper. But other than that, he would come up to me. So it's an unconscious response. It's not like the dog didn't recognize who I was, but that sound put him into terror. Okay, so the same thing happens to us. If we have experiences in our early childhood, which we all do, we begin to react autonomically. We don't think about it. It just happens. And this is the difference between shamanic work and affirmations. Okay, so when we have an affirmation, we'll say that to ourselves and we'll go, we're trying to force that in through our mind. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I am good enough. I am good enough. I am good enough. I am good enough. And then it comes time to, get up on stage and speak and, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. Okay? Everyone's going to laugh at me. I'm good enough. Oh, I'm not scared. Right? And this conflict happens. Whereas if we can actually get to the point where that original agreement came in and uproot that and replace that, we just respond differently. And that's the beauty of it. In the shamanic work, Our whole intermediate training is about uprooting these agreements that are short-circuiting us in life, preventing us from maintaining this clear connection and channel to Creator, and grounding that in Mother Earth. So we begin to uproot that, and then that becomes our habit. That becomes our unconscious autonomic response. That's a cellular healing. That's on a cellular level, so that when we are encountered a situation, we just respond differently in a more empowered way. And that's what's so beautiful. When I see that happen with my students, when I've experienced that in myself, that's just the most rewarding thing in the world to me. So then from that place, for the people who want to go on and do deeper levels of healing, like extraction technique and soul retrieval and psychopump and clearing entities and all that kind of stuff, we teach that, but we teach that afterwards, because we want to make sure that everybody has this first. This protects us, each individual from taking on that from other clients, and also from receiving the projections of others, knowing how to handle that type of thing. Because remember, I'll go back to what you talked about in the beginning, when somebody has an awakening and they decide to just change their life and step out of their old life into a new one. There's a lot of fallout that comes with that. Your old friends, your family, your old peers and coworkers, they all have their opinions, and many of them will project those opinions onto you. Now, they may not be accurate, but they can still be hurtful. And so how to handle that type of thing is really important, because we are walking people through an incredibly transformative process. And when we do that, when we walk through that process, we have to be able to handle the fact that somebody might say things that are hurtful. And what do we do with that type of energy? How do we protect ourselves from that type of energy? Not in denial, not by saying, well, it's just words, but secretly inside really being hurt and offended and upset about that. Okay. It's important that we fully are able to say, no, you know what, that energy belongs to you, and I'm going to keep my positive energy, my life force energy, for myself. Okay. That's really, really important. So that's how we do that, where we can help ourselves first, and that helps us bring forth our unique gifts. That allows us to have the confidence to be able to step forward in the world. We have to be able to have the confidence. If I'm bringing forth my gifts tentatively, it doesn't work out very well, right? Like, imagine a young man wanting to ask a young woman out on a first date and thinking, well, she's never going to say yes, and he can't even ask, but secretly she has a crush on him anyway, right? But he doesn't even get to ask her, and he blows it because he's so wrapped up in his own self-judgment, his own insecurities, right? We have to take care of all that stuff first before we're able to make a positive contribution and fully bring forth our medicine.
I love what you're sharing, because also we are not conscious of many of these things many times, right? So it's like, no, I'm not angry, but then inside there is all this anger. Or I'm not afraid, and then there is so much fear inside, but it's so deep that we don't access to that only with the mind. The mind thinks we're fine. So this is why, like, I love what you're saying about affirmations don't work in the same way, because you can keep telling yourself, I'm okay, but then deep down, unconsciously, there is a voice that is saying, no, you're not. You are broken, you are. So until we don't deal with that inner voice that is also there, it's hard to not to react to life and start responding. So I love that, and the integration that is necessary, that with psychedelics is harder to integrate, because that part of the work is very important, not just the journey itself. What do you do with that in your life? So I love that that take, and first work on your own before you are helping others, right? Because if not, all these unconscious patterns are also taking place.
Yes, 100%. I mean, anybody who's spent any time in the ocean or done any type of rescue or life-saving work knows it. Don't jump in and drown to try and save somebody else, and you have two people in distress in the water.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or the same like in airplanes, right? You put your mask first before you help another person, because if not, what what are you doing? So I think in this time that all these people are, I think all this unconscious is kind of like coming up to the surface for so many people around the world. First, our responsibility is to do our own work. And then some point, it's like I love what you said, that one person came to you, can you teach me? So that is a sign from a spirit, like now you're ready to teach this. It's not pushing it forward. It's kind of like it's coming to you as well. So
right, exactly. It's effortless.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's the effortless effort. Sure, I'm diligent in my work, but I'm effortless. And so if I'm feeling resistance, I'll journey on it. I'll say, well, why am I receiving resistance here? Why do I have resistance? What am I not seeing when I'm banging my head against the wall? Well, now I learn not to bang my head against the wall. I go, oh, whoa, hey, wait a minute, stop, back up, see what's there, right? But when I was younger, I certainly banged my head against the wall quite a lot. And, we all have, right?
Yes.
And there's a humility, okay? So there's a humility that's important. We have to be able to admit that. We have to be able to say, yes, I am angry about that, and that's okay. I'm human, I have an emotion. Okay? Too many people have this complex about having to be perfect, perfectionism. That's not where it's at, guys and ladies, okay? Just because you're a teacher or a healer, you're not perfect. You're perfect as you are, but you're not flawless. You're supposed to have flaws. I have flaws, you have flaws, we all have flaws. We're supposed to be that way, okay? If I'm driving and I'm about to park and someone like steals my parking place, hey, I'm allowed to be upset. That was rude. And I'm allowed to call them out, okay? What I'm not allowed to do is use my spiritual power to hurt them. That's wrong, okay? But I am allowed to say, hey man, that was rude. Why'd you do that? And maybe I'll find out, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to, but it's an emergency and I really need to get in there because my kid, blah, blah, blah. And, oh, okay. Or maybe they are just being rude. Okay, so it's okay. We're allowed to have our reactions. We're allowed to have our reactions. It's important that we have our authentic emotional reactions to things. Another thing that I want to bring forward and share is, actually there's two other things that I want to share. One is when you talk about, we speak about doing healing work and harming ourselves and not taking care of our own house first, not being grounded, not putting our own air mask before helping the person next to us in the seat on the airplane. That comes from a very large unconscious societal agreement around martyrdom. And so martyrdom has been used against the population for, well, at least 2,000 years to force people or trick people into self-sacrifice, into doing things that aren't healthy for us, okay? When we stop trying to be a martyr, we realize that we can set boundaries. Okay, so martyrdom, if I have an agreement about martyrdom, it's a really good way to undercut boundaries, my own boundaries. Oh, well, I don't want to do it, but I should because that will make me a good person. How about if you just respect your own boundaries and then look at the other person and say, I'd really like to help you. And this is the way in which I can help you because I also need to respect myself. Okay. So when people talk about loving kindness and compassion, please have love and kindness for yourself as well as others. Don't be selfish. Okay. Please don't be selfish, but please have the love and compassion for yourself. Okay. And so it's that reaction to the martyrdom, which creates the opposite reaction of greed and hoarding. Okay. If you spent your whole life overgiving, and then one day it's the straw that broke the camel's back and you go, that's it. And then you flip and you become a selfish hoarder. That doesn't help anybody either. Okay. Neither of those, both of those extremes are harmful. Okay. We want to have this balanced path of the center. Okay. We want to have this balanced path of the center where we say, yes, this is what I need to meet my needs. And how can we also meet your needs? How can we all win in this? How can we all contribute? How can we all make a positive difference without harming myself? Don't harm yourself, please. Don't harm yourself. Don't overextend yourself to the point where you're harming yourself day by day, because what's going to happen is you'll burn out. And what we don't need is people who want to make a positive contribution all burning out and and giving up. Because then the people who are not making positive contribution and exploiting the world, they'll have the staying power. Okay, so we need to have staying power. And in order to have staying power, we absolutely 100% have to self-care. Okay, so self-care is a huge part of what I teach. Energetic self-care. Almost our entire intermediate training is about self-care and self-protection. And in fact, we're just finished filming, and it will be available by the time this interview airs, our energetic self-protection. So it's an energy healing class, actually understanding the energy body. And it's a very simple energy healing routine in which anybody can do every day for about 10 minutes. And it helps to regenerate and restore our energy body on the fundamental level, on the primordial level, okay? And also to clear any type of interference that is there, anything that's in the way, whether it's externally or internally from our own old stuff. So it's very important, the self-protection, the self-care. We have to do the self-care. That's how we can wake up in the morning and still bring forth the energy, the right energy to the situation, a positive energy to the situation, a loving energy. And so if you're coming from a place of martyrdom, if you're coming from a place of being depleted, sure, you can bring that energy and force yourself into it, but eventually it's all going to break. You don't have the foundation for it. And then one other thing I actually wanted to talk about as well is spiritual hierarchy, because that came up previously in our conversation. It's very about respect, okay? We each have to respect each other as part of the web of life. We each have to respect each other, that the spirit that moves through all things comes through us, each of us, in our own unique way. This is part about having the courage to be myself. This is part about bringing forth my own unique individual medicine. Okay, so what we do is we're never teaching you what you're going to see in a journey. That's wrong. That's putting a filter over you. Okay, so there's a lot of places in the world where hierarchies have been imposed, spiritual hierarchies, in which the teacher assumes the role up here and the student down there. And that's not proper. Okay. Yes, I have experience and I'm willing to share my experience to help. But we already make a deal about that. We make a financial exchange for that service. Just like when I go into the store and I buy something from the store, I make my financial exchange, but they don't then come on with some kind of like, I'm above you because I had this thing that you needed. Okay, that's wrong. Okay, so it's the same thing. We cannot allow this in our spiritual work. We have to respect that once I know somebody is journeying, and I'm going to be able to look and say, actually, I don't think you've made your connection yet. Okay, you didn't see anything. But then once we know that someone's made that authentic connection, then I respect that as equally valid to my own. Now, I may also be able to see, hey, that's distorted by your belief systems. That's distorted by some of your agreements, but that doesn't mean the information is invalid. It's then about, okay, how do you learn your symbolic language? How do you learn how to receive that information from spirit and understand it and ground it? So we're empowering each individual to do that for themselves. We're empowering each individual to be their unique selves and make their own personal contribution in their own way. The courage to be themselves, the courage to step forward into the world in that way. Okay, so that's really important. It's hugely important when you're looking for any type of teacher in any field. You have to make sure there's no spiritual hierarchy. There can be experience, there can be respect, there should be respect, and the respect has to run both ways. Okay, you never want to get into a situation where a spiritual teacher is saying that they're above you, because then they're going to be feeding on your life force energy. So it's really, really important that when you're looking around for teachers and courses, that you do that, because the way the energy flows, when it goes up and out, it's leaving, it's a dispelling energy, and when it comes in and down, it's a nourishing and receiving energy, right? So it's very easy for somebody to get up there on a stage and go, Okay, everybody give their energy up, and him or her to go and to pull that energy into themselves. And that's a very, not very nice misuse of that type of power. So we always have to watch. We always have to watch. Is this a fair exchange? Is the energetic exchange fair? And so a lot of what we talk about in our coursework in self-care is managing that. Okay, so when we talk about somebody having an awakening and, you know, kind of stepping out of their own life, what they're really looking at is the energy exchange was imbalanced previously because I wasn't being true to myself, and I allowed these imbalanced energy exchanges that didn't favor me. And that's why so many people go through these things of having to just cut and step away, because you need to have that, you need to step away to have that perspective. It's only from the perspective of distance that you can see how that actually functioned. Okay. However, with our shamanic work, we can create that without having to disrupt your entire life. You don't have to you know, leave everything behind. You can do it day by day and make the changes. And then you are in a position of being able to rebalance those energy exchanges with people. And some people are going to go, yeah, absolutely. That's great. And they'll be supportive. Those are your friends. Those are the people who respect you. And others, they're going to push back real hard. And those are the ones who you're going to have a serious conversation with, or decide to not have them in your circle.
I love that. And I think it's kind of like a personal journey for many people to have, when we start with the spirituality and then you have a teacher and then you honor the teacher, but then some point you are seeing that energy is not fair, is not equal. And there is this need of saying, no, this is not correct. And I always say that for me, there is a red flag when someone put themselves like, I have done all my work.
Yeah.
Like I'm already like, I'm here and I have done all my work. And it's like, no, you're still human. So as far as you are still here with a body, there is still more stuff that will come. And you're just in a position that you can help others to deal with their own unconscious patterns, but that doesn't mean that I'm done. I have done my work and that's it. And I have seen so many teachers doing that, and a lot of abuse even in certain schools. And what you were saying, like people taking power from other people. So that is also an inner responsibility for each one of us when we see that, to break from that dynamic, because it's not doing any good to either person, right? It's just like it's not healthy. So,
Yes.
and it's
Yes.
very important because it can happen anytime, because I personally feel that most of the times the teacher is not even conscious of doing this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree that it's an unconscious habit most of the time, not all the time. Sometimes
Not all the time. Yes, totally agree
and
with
that's
that.
the difference. That's the difference between evil and just a mistake.
Yes.
Okay, so my definition of evil is someone who feeds off of the pain of another consciously.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so someone who consciously feeds off of the pain and suffering of others. That to me is evil. Okay, now we all have our stuff and we may unconsciously do it. But if you call me on my stuff and I go, oh, you're right. Thank you for pointing that out to me. I didn't realize I did that. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. Look, just ask my wife. She calls me on my stuff all the time. Okay?
Yes.
You hurt my feelings. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Yeah, I did. I messed up again. And yeah, I know I did that like 30 times this year already. Sorry. I'm doing my best. That's authentic. That's real. Okay? But it's not evil. Okay, it's just I just made a mistake. I got my patterns. I have my programs. So what I do for myself, when I am about to do a healing session on somebody, and I go into the room where they're on the table and we talk and we meet and we greet and we do some preliminary, and maybe I'll smudge them and we do a little prayer and an offering and all that stuff. But before I'm about to actually do the energy healing and do the shamanic journey on their behalf, after we've had that, I go, hey, Creator, can you take my stuff and just my issues and put them outside the door right now? Because I don't want this to interfere with my session. So can you take my stuff and put it outside the door? And if you want to just keep it, that would be great, because I really don't want it back. But if I need to take it back, I'll take it back after the session. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to be a clear channel for somebody when they're on my table, when I'm teaching a class. And I'm also realistic enough to know that I've got my whole list of issues. And, but I just asked, hey, can you put this aside? So yeah, I'm done. I've reached it. I'm done for now. And 2 hours later, yeah,
2 hours, you can come back.
They can come back, right? I've done my, but actually it's not even true. I grow in each session. I grow in each teaching because I learn. I learn from my students. I learn from the act of teaching because everybody has a question. Everybody has their own way of looking at things. And when I listen to those questions, it makes me think and go, okay, how do I explain that in this way? And oftentimes through explaining that, I have a new angle and perspective on things because I can then see it through the eyes of my student asking me the question. And when I was learning Tai Chi, and then my teacher at the time, he said, now you need to teach. This is going back about 8 years ago. You need to start teaching now. And I said, why? He goes, because that's how you're going to learn. You've learned enough from watching me. Now you have to learn by teaching. You have to embody it enough. You have to get in. Now you've been working in your body. Now you have to start getting into other people's bodies and explaining to them how to feel what you already feel. Okay, so that's a big part of it, is being able to learn from our students, learn from our peers, and learn from our teachers and our mentors as well. We have to be open. We have to be open to receive. This is what it is about, allowing the darkness, which is our unknown, the things that we don't know, to receive the light. Okay, this is how we grow in the world.
Yes, yes. Okay, perfect. So I think we can talk now. We already did, but a little bit more about the free gift that people, and then how to contact you. We will have also the website and everything. But yeah, I would like you to explain a little bit about the free gift that people will be able to have access to your work. And that's it. It's like we're finished. So what would you like to share about that?
Thanks, Mark. So we have a page that we've set up on our website for all our listeners. And the free gift is an introduction to shamanic journeying. So it's a 90-minute video tutorial that you can watch that will teach you how to undertake a shamanic journey with the drum on your own. And we walk you through step by step. It's actually taken from one of our online classes. It's some excerpts from our first online class. So in our Fundamentals of Shamanism, we have a 5-class course, and this is excerpts from part of class 1. And you'll basically be sitting in on part of the class with our students, videotaped. And what you'll do is you'll be watching the lecture. There's some notes that are on that page as well that you can listen to. You can print out and follow along. And it talks you through step by step how to journey. And then there's actually a live drumming track on that audio recording where you will undertake, if you choose, your first shamanic journey to go meet your power animal in the lower world and receive a healing from your power animal. And then towards the end of the video, you listen to some people sharing about their journey experiences. Also on that page is a link to a free download of a shamanic drumming track that you can either listen to live stream anytime. If you want to go back and journey over and over again, you can listen to that directly on our page, or you can just download it and have it for yourself on whatever local device you have. So this is how you can go, and you can repeat these journeys. Once you meet your power animal and receive a healing, you can go back and ask for more guidance. And we talk about that in the video, how to receive, how to phrase some questions, how to ask for guidance, how to ask for healing, and the proper procedure to make sure that you're journeying in the lower world for your power animal. It's very important that we make sure we're connecting with benevolent and helping spirits, because there's a lot of stuff in the spirit world. We don't want to just indiscriminately open our doorway. Just like if you live in a big city, you don't indiscriminately open your door and let anybody walk in. Right? So you want to make sure you're only inviting in the benevolent spirits. Okay. That's really, really important. Some people think, oh, spiritual growth, let the spirits in. Whoa, whoa, wait a minute. Which spirits? Let's decide what we're letting in first, please. Okay. And then for those of you who are interested in taking our training, we also have a special $100 discount coupon for our Fundamentals of Shamanism online class. And Mar, you'll have the link for that as well,
yes,
available
I'll
to
have
everybody.
that.
So, and that's special here for everybody who's watching this presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So anything else that you would like to add, or?
No, just thank you so much for having me. I
Yeah,
really
thank
appreciate
you.
the
Yeah.
opportunity to share with you and your audience, and nice to see you and participate. It's a real honor to be able to participate, and I very much honor what you're doing and in bringing your medicine forth in the world. It's beautiful the way you're shining a positive light and helping, encouraging, and supporting people. It's really wonderful. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And for everyone, have a nice day and see you in the next interview.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.